So I was scrolling on LinkedIn and I saw this interesting post about product launches and things that can go wrong. I think a lot of product marketers get tripped up, and I think a lot of founders and co-founders is it's going to be one of the hardest things to do is company-wide alignment. So understanding this one key concept is going to help you in the future when you're launching your product. The mistakes that I've made in my past have almost made me abide by this law or this principle or this catchphrase, whatever it is. It's simply this: different teams work at different speeds. Different teams work at different speeds. If there's anything you take away from this video, it's that different teams in your company, in your organization, in your startup will work at different speeds. And if that is not understood, and if that's not taken into account, if that potential risk is not mitigated, it's going to lead into unsuccessful launches. So I want to cover over what you can do to minimize this risk, how to call it out. I also want to talk about, what does it look like in different teams, right? Because different teams might have different objectives. That's really important. So in this video, we're going to cover how acknowledging this truth will lead to better product launches and team alignment. And for me, the hardest thing was that team alignment, especially when you're in a bigger organization. Team alignment is going to it's pretty hectic and it's pretty hard, especially when you're trying to launch a product. It's very hard to align different teams because different teams work at different capacities. And because teams work at different capacities and different speeds, miscommunication, misalignment tends to happen. It's just, it just does. It tends to happen. But there are things to do to, call this out, make this something that's visible and seen in the back of people's minds, and minimize the risk or mitigate the risk completely. So the impact of misalignment, the reason why you don't want this is because it can have varying effects across the board when launching a product. It can lead to delays, it can lead to missed deadlines, and ultimately it's just going to lead to a chaotic, a messy product launch. At the worst case, it's going to lead to an unsuccessful product launch. So focusing on this, avoiding misalignment, miscommunication, and understanding that different teams work at different speeds, you're going to be in a better position than you would be going in blind. Now, in the post of the LinkedIn, the product marketing manager mentions that he was gearing up for a product launch and he had a go or no-go call right before launch date, which is typical in companies. This is a part of the phase where you decide if all the resources are met, if things are going according to plan, if teams have what they need to be successful in order for the product launch to go successful. And he talks about how there was a no-go from I believe it was the operations team, that they didn't have something that was needed. And this caught him by surprise. He thought he was going to blow this out of the water, and he didn't get buy-in across the operations teams. And what resonated to me was that different teams work at different speeds. And, sometimes you can try your best, you can do the most you can, but there needs to be some kind of guardrails in place so that the teams can make it to that finish line, so that they feel they'll be successful from their team's perspective and what their teams need to accomplish. And I'll give you some examples later on in this video. So the way I, looking back on my experiences, knowing what I know now, I would have told my younger self, work backwards. Ultimately, the company has certain goals to meet. So let's say, for example, let's start by defining the overall goal of the launch. So you want to work backwards from that launch goal to achieve the different goals that each team needs to achieve. For the marketing team, success might look like acquiring X amount of market share, which ladders up to the company goal of, let's just say, X amount of revenue. The way I would do this so that I know if I'm leading this product launch, if I need to have a good gauge on if the marketing team feels like they'll be successful in their marketing KPIs or OKRs that roll up to that company goal, I need to set tasks or milestones along the way so that we both know, and we're not literally signing a contract, but we're saying these are the tasks that you're saying and I'm saying that if the marketing team meet, they will feel that they are ready for success, and that they'll meet their marketing goals, and that'll help contribute to the overall company goal. These tasks might include something like crafting a press release. It could include a task like pitching to journalists. It can include a task of scheduling publication dates. This is just an example of let's say, the PR team that is within the whole marketing team. So sales might aim to close a number of deals post-launch. And so some tasks that you might attach to that might be something like this. They'll need thorough training. They're selling a product, so they need some product training. They might need to go over pricing and be very knowledgeable in pricing. So you might want to set up a pricing training specifically for pricing. They might need competitor awareness and competitor training as well. So that could be a separate thing. They also might need updated sales materials. So either myself as a product marketing manager might help with that, or maybe someone in the sales engineering team might help with that as well. But someone should be responsible for that. Ultimately, that had to happen for the sales team to be successful. And they also might need time to reach out to prospects. So all of these tasks you're setting along as a trail, and if they can hit all of these check boxes, then we'll say that the sales team has what they need to be successful, to reach their own sales goals, and that will also attribute to the success of the overall product launch and reading the company revenue goal. So breaking these goals down into tasks that include a timeline and some buffer time. And this is really important. Allowing some buffer time, some time to take place for someone to take responsibility, accomplish these goals. And if worst scenario happens, or if not, then you might have to step in. But allowing that buffer time at least gives you time to clear out, get things done, have some capacity on your end to then step in and accomplish this task. Trust me, allow for some buffer time. This is essential. Again, break down the goals into tasks that have a timeline and also have a buffer time that allows people in that team to accomplish the task, or at least gives you time to clear out things on your agenda to focus on these tasks that need help getting accomplished for the sales team or the product team or the marketing team or whatever team to be successful. And remember, going back to our framework principle, different teams work at what? That's right, at different speeds. So this is why this component of a buffer time is really essential. In fact, for me, it's non-negotiable. So because different teams work at different speeds means we need to build buffer times into our schedules. This helps accommodate unexpected delays and keeps everyone on track. Another thing that's really important is called a pre-mortem. And a pre-mortem is basically you take your stakeholders sitting down and thinking what could go possibly wrong, the probability of it going wrong, and then what happens or what needs to happen to get back on track if that thing goes wrong, or how can we mitigate this completely so this never happens. That is pretty much a pre-mortem. Or you can go ahead and do this yourself as like a pre-run. That way you get all of the ideas that are obvious out of the way, and that will help your stakeholders not use that as their ideas, but it'll help them brainstorm on more creative ideas that they have from their experiences or their expertise that they bring to the table that you wouldn't be able to come up with. So I like to have ideas already out there. So that's a pre-mortem. So bring everyone in to a meeting, jot this down, and then bake this into your overall plan. And then if things do go wrong, at least you've already planned for this and you know what to do to get back on track. Things happen. The important things is you get back up and you get back on track. So this proactive step essentially is your contingency plan. That's how I like to think of it. I like to think things visually, and the way I like to think about this whole, different teams work at different speeds and the whole process within that product launch is I think of it as a barometer or different barometers. Each team is their own barometer, and essentially each team is starting cold, 0 temperature, right? When you reach the peak of hotness scale, not that kind of hotness, but the temperature hotness, that is essentially like a successful, really hot product launch. And so each task that the team completes, they gain a little bit of temperature. And then the next task, they gain more temperature. And it's almost like momentum. It's always accumulating. It's moving towards an upward direction. And sometimes some teams will, accomplish a task and they'll just stay there. It'll stay there. And while the other teams are doing their tasks, getting harder and harder and harder, and they're meeting deadlines and they're doing the tasks, and we're all thinking, oh, this is going to lead to a successful launch because the things that we've said are required to lead to a successful launch are getting done and being met. So it's almost like a race, right? And what I would do is I would kind of measure that by the tasks that are being done. And if a team is falling behind and falling short of the stick, you might need to step in and help with that, or at least delegate that to someone else within that team. And so this is why, which leads me to my next thing, is frequency of communication is essential, and you can go about this different ways. Different teams might like to communicate differently through different channels. Some people just like meetings. It's just the way it is. Other teams might want to communicate through Loom videos. Other teams might want to communicate on Slack. So it really depends. But ultimately, a face-to-face virtual meeting is almost essential. The way I run product launches is usually when you're in that execution part of that product launch phase, where alignment is extremely necessary. Having a weekly meeting where all stakeholders meet and you go slide by slide, getting the things done that need to get done. And this is where it's essential because you get to talk about, roadblocks for certain teams or team members, obstacles, people are calling things out. This is where a back and forth dialogue is allowed and people have questions and you answer those questions. So I think this is one of the most important tools in our arsenal. It's just overall team meeting where you talk about the product launch. Some potential pitfalls to avoid are as follows. 1, quality over quantity. Don't just focus on getting the check on that task, but focus on the actual quality of the task that needs to be accomplished. It's not just about ticking off tasks, it's about executing them well. For instance, if the marketing team rushes on, let's say, the positioning, and that was one of the tasks that they needed to do, and they just ticked it off, they did the positioning, and then we later realized after an unsuccessful product launch that we didn't have the positioning correct, which had cascading effects on the messaging, on the copy, on the website copy, on the outreach that sales used because they used based off of the positioning. So this is where you need to be very careful, and quality over quantity matters. You might be thinking, great, I'm a founder or a co-founder. What's my role in all of this? Your role in this is to be a medium of communication, or you need to at least facilitate open communication between teams. And if you work at a startup, that's even great because there's less teams at a startup and it should be a lot simpler, a lot easier for you. But your role is to essentially just be a facilitator for open communication between teams. You want to be supporting your teams. You want to monitor the progress and offer support where needed, whether that's relocating tasks or jumping in yourself to accomplish those tasks. Another thing is adjusting plans as needed. In startup land, we always talk about building the plane as we fly. I like to think of it as more so in-flight small adjustments. You need to be prepared to adjust timelines and plans based on teams' capacities and their overall speed at which they move, and also any unforeseen circumstances or challenges that may rise. So let's bring this all together. Remember, different teams work at different speeds, and acknowledging this key very early on can save you from a terrible product launch. So you want to work backwards from your company goals so that each team has their own goals to meet. You need to be aware of each team's goals, what they need to accomplish to be successful, and then go based off of that. Break those goals into smaller tasks with the addition of a buffer time. Thank me later for that one. Maintain open communication and ensure quality execution. So my final thought on all of this is the following. By aligning your teams effectively, you're setting yourself up for a smoother, more successful product launch. If you found this video successful, don't subscribe, just like the video. and share your own experiences. If you ever launched a product, if you're a founder or co-founder, do you disagree? Do you like my catchphrase? Which one? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Different teams work at different, that's right, different speeds. Anyways, I'd love to hear from you. Let me know your thoughts.